was, but I used to actually see Malcolm X preaching on the corners in Harlem. I didn't know then what I know now, so I had no idea what the significance of that was. In fact, the two biggest speakers during that time when I was up there, because this was from 57 to 62, I'll never forget Malcolm on the corners, and I'll also never forget if you go into a restaurant, there was always one table that nobody ever sat at because that table was reserved for Father Divine. So even at 5 years old, I remember Father Divine and Malcolm X in Harlem.
Speaking of that, at the time in Harlem, a lot of speakers, including Dick Gregory, actually spoke out there on the corner. They just stood up on the corner, much like in London in Hyde Park, which I think they still do that in London. But a lot of people even Fidel Castro would come through. And the station I worked for, WLIB at the time, was stationed in Harlem, 125th and Lenox. Lenox Avenue was at the time, Harlem Radio Center, 310 Lenox. Anyway, they recorded all of those speeches there. Reel-to-reel speeches of great folks like Malcolm, and you just named some people in the Harlem Renaissance. They recorded all of that kind of stuff up there. But it's interesting that you mentioned that, because that we don't see that happening anymore, especially
I was just a little child, so I had no idea. But the thing about being a little child was I was able to go right through the crowd and go right up front to watch these things, If I knew then what I knew now, or even years later about the significance of that, I would have paid more attention. But yeah, it was interesting. Back in those days, I had the swollen belly like a third world child, going from relative to relative, and the Bronx, Manhattan, also in Harlem, And then now that I look at photographs today, Harlem has changed so much today. I mean, there's been so much urban renewal or gentrification in that area. But when I looked at photographs, even from the 70s and stuff, I'm like, I remember that as a child. Didn't know what it was at the time, but yeah, I remember that. There's a movie, too, that kind of brings us some of those images for me. It's the movie Angel of Heart with Lisa Bonet. They don't mention Father Divine in that movie, but one of the characters that's depicted in that movie with Lisa Bonet and Robert De Niro, there's a black minister that everybody's following, kind of like a cult following, and I suspect it's probably Father Divine that they're alluding to in that movie.
Yeah, you
know who studied Father Divine immensely, right?
Who?
Jim Jones.
Oh wow.
Oh yeah, he took most of his ideas came from Father Divine, and to this day, people still debate whether he came from Georgia or South Carolina. Nobody knows how old he was when he went up to New York, but yeah. And he still has followers today. Father Divine still has followers, so, I'm sure some are listening to the show. And since we are in the Washington, D.C. area today, Mr. Nelson, before we get started, and since this is Black History Month, I dedicate this show in the memory of police officer Gail Cobb. Sadly, I would suspect most people hearing that name, even those in the D.C. area listening, they don't know that name. But Gail Cobb was killed in the early 70s. She was the first female police officer in the United States who was murdered in the line of duty. She was responded to a robbery, and she and her partners, actually, she was writing a ticket when she was told about this robbery that was going down, and the suspects had split up, so some of the officers were going after some of the suspects, and she confronted. Well, we got a break coming up, so I'll finish this on the other side.
Yeah, you'll tell us the other side of the story, because we got to take a look at the traffic and weather in the DMV. Folks, you want to speak to Mark from Anaheim, reach out to us, 800-450-7876. We'll take your calls after this short break on FM 95.9. Is Mark there?
I am here.
Yes, sir. I'll let you finish your story.
So what I was saying before the break was I dedicate this show today in the memory of Gail Cobb, who was a police officer of the Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police Department, and she was the first female United States law enforcement officer to be killed in the line of duty. Unfortunately, she was shot and killed by a shotgun-wielding suspect. And it's kind of sad with her story because, one, most of us today don't know that name, especially those in law enforcement who always want to talk about the white versus black thing in law enforcement. Well, the first female killed in the line of duty was a black female. Yeah, there was a white female who died while serving on duty, but she wasn't murdered in the line of duty. But, what's sad with her story, though, is her son never recovered. She was a single mom, and her son never really recovered from her murder, and he ended up becoming a part of the criminal system. But if I strongly research, I strongly suggest for those out there, since this is Black History Month and you want to tell stories, especially, because I support women, Gail Cobb is definitely one person to do some research on. She still has family members in the D.C. area, and they had a few slaps in their faces, too, with suspects who had been arrested and convicted for those crimes who ended up being released earlier than the families thought they should have been. In fact, one tried to get a law degree. Fortunately, state Supreme Court turned his request down, but the pain still lingers on for them, I'm sure, as well as anybody else who knew her. I'd also like to, Mr. Nelson, since we're talking about the big press conference today, what is everybody talking about right now, Mr. Nelson?
Oh, Jesse Smollett, I guess it's, is it a distraction as far as you're concerned?
Well, I don't watch television, but I did buy the 3 seasons of Empire. It's some of the best music you'll ever hear. He's a genius. And some of the biggest names, especially in black music, but not just black music. Very interesting show. Shows you really how dirty the music industry is. But, see, that's not what I remember him for. What I remember him, as well as his sister, for, and who else I'm dedicating this show to today, is everybody who was involved with the WGN-produced television show with Misha Green and, of course, her sidekick, Joe Pulaski. They did the show called Underground. Once again, I don't watch television, so, I don't know why, but I'll get this impulse in my brain to go down to the local video store, and I find myself on an island. Okay, why am I picking up this video? And I picked up Underground that way and watched Underground. I've watched it several times since, and I'm going to tell you, Mr. Nelson, for those of you out there who've never seen Underground, in my opinion, it is the best show I've ever seen in regards to just what slavery was like, especially in relationships to those who were helping slaves to escape from plantations. Blacks and whites helping, slaves to escape to their freedom. So it's sad to see this whole situation going on. I'm not going to make any judgment on this. I have some questions of my own. I've had questions from day one when I heard the descriptions of what was going on in that incident, but I have not posted anything publicly in regards to my opinions about this because what I truly believe, I don't think the listeners want to hear right now. They're not ready for this, but I'll just say this. I think there's more to this story, and I think even the guy now who has just been arrested doesn't even realize, but he was manipulated into doing what he was doing because it serves a greater cause. Because once again, what network are we talking about, Mr. Nelson?
The Fox.
There you go. And I'm sure a lot of people who worship Fox News didn't like the way they saw certain things depicted on that TV show, and they were pretty right out in the open as far as the homosexual, love affairs and things like that. So I'm sure there's more to the story, and I don't even think he saw it coming because, unfortunately, a lot of us who assimilate into other people's worlds start thinking and acting the way they do and thinking that we're untouchable and not even see it coming when somebody is sent as your close confidant or your ally, and that's the person that's going to take you down. It's always going to be somebody you trust. So we'll see how this works out. Unfortunately, though, it's a stain on his legacy because he did appear in a couple of episodes of Underground. And of course, his sister, Janae, she was one of the stars of that show. And for those of you who have only seen him on Underground, where he plays the gay musician, I strongly suggest you see him in the character he plays in Underground as the angry black man who finds the white lawyer who negotiated a deal to sell his wife and child from one plantation to another. It's pretty hardcore. It's nothing like his character in Underground. So that's what I dedicate the show to memory of Gail Cobb and for all those who had anything to do with the television show Underground, because it's a must-see for those out there who really want to see what I consider the best depiction of what it was like during that time just prior to the Civil War.
All right. Hey, you said you were going to tell us about kleptocracy?
I did?
Yeah.
I wouldn't remember, Mr. Nelson, because, like, a silly person, I wouldn't post it on my Facebook that I was going to appear on your show, and moments later, I had no electricity. My computer is fried. All my notes for the show are gone. I do have a new computer, but I can't get back online, and I can't open my files with this new computer. So, did I talk about kleptocracy to you? For those out there who don't know what kleptocracy is, I keep it simple. Just think of a kleptomaniac. I think most of us know a kleptomaniac is somebody who steals, even sometimes stealing, not even knowing why they steal. They have this compulsion to steal. Well, on a worldwide basis, we're dealing with people today who are, they're sociopaths, maybe even psychopaths. But the point is, they can never get enough. They want it all. And they are robbing worldwide. Now, you know, Mr. Nelson, I've talked to you on this show before about Smedley Butler, and Smedley Butler was the general who stopped the coup attempt against FDR. And before Smedley Butler was forced to retire from the Marine Corps, he accused Mussolini of being a fascist. And that caused such an uproar in this country that he was forced to retire. Well, it's Mussolini who coined the term fascism. He was a fascist. And I make no predictions here today, but I'm going to tell you right now, if the Democratic Party keeps on the same track they've been doing for the last 9 years, they're going to lose the next election. And you want to know why, Mr. Nelson? The Republicans have no problem calling Democratic nominees or Democratic elected officials as socialists, or even suggested them being communists. And socialism and communism are not the same thing. But, you know, we live in a dumbed-down nation, so people equate the same. Excuse me. However, you never hear the Democrats call these folks out for who they are. Fascists. And until the Democratic Party starts using that term fascist on a daily basis, they have no chance of doing well in the 2020 elections. I just call a spade, and you know me, I have no problem saying these guys are fascists, and that's what they are. They're fascists. So you have fascism now that has emerged in the Philippines, Hungary, over in Great Britain. That's why you have the Brexit. In fact, the same folks like Steve Bannon and these fascists over there, they're doing the same thing in Great Britain that they're doing here, setting up the situation where you get the Yellow Jacks in France. You go down to Brazil, you got a guy who idolizes Trump, fascist. That's what's happening, folks. And along with this fascism, you have these folks who are robbing the poor to make themselves wealthy. That's your kleptocrats. Now, I mentioned Smedley Butler because Smedley Butler wrote a book called War is a Racket. And in his book, he actually thought he was, you know, he's a two-time Medal of Honor recipient, so he thought he was a hero fighting for this country until he realized he was nothing but a thug that was working for the big banks of the United States. And he even said he could have taught Al Capone a few things because Al Capone was only working in 3 regions of this country, whereas Smedley Butler was serving on 3 different continents working for the bankers of this country. But then you had Hitler, Mr. Nelson. Yeah, Hitler killed a lot of Jews. But first and foremost, Hitler was a kleptocrat. He sent people out around Europe, and all they did was rob the banks and rob the art galleries. They were robbing the people blind. So, yeah, they had their devious, occultic, religious perspective, and yeah, they may have hated the Jews and the gypsies and blacks and anybody who wasn't white and Aryan. But first and foremost, they were thieves, kleptocrats. And I have to tell you, you know, sadly, compared to Hitler, compared to Smedley Butler, what's going on in this country today makes them look like rookies. Because today, we have the computers. And they're stealing and robbing us blind. So, you know, while we can be distracted with the Empire TV show and being distracted with all the minutiae here, meanwhile, they are robbing us blind. Now, listen, I came on your show in the early 90s, and I said that this country was headed for a major stock market collapse. I'm no prophet. I just simply pay attention to what's going on. And the very things that was going on prior to the big stock market crash of the late 1920s, thanks to, in large part, to deregulation under the Reagan administration, the bankers and the corrupt elected officials were doing the same things again. So it was inevitable that we were going to have a stock market crash that ended up happening in 2007, 2008. Well, those folks didn't learn anything from that. It's been 10 years now, and they're doing the same thing again, except it's worse this time Because at least in 2007, 2008, you still had human beings on Wall Street making most of those corrupt deals. Now they've been replaced by artificial intelligence and bots that have no moral scruples or values and won't even have that human element where the person might change his or her mind about making some deal. So I know we're coming up to another break here, but I hope that explains to the audience what kleptocracy is, and you can see an idea how it's going to affect all of us.
All right, 800-450-7876. When we come back, a bunch of folks want to speak to you. You too can join the conversation. Should you want to take some calls? Is Mark still there?
I am here, sir. And before we take the call, I just wanted to finish what I was going to tell the listeners out there, just to give you a bit of an idea what I'm referring to. In the 80s, we had such things as the savings and loan scandal, and now today we have basically no savings and loans. That's where most of us got a home that wasn't gouging us. Now you have to go to the corrupt banks to get a loan for a home loan. We had things like the Nugan Bank, and that's Nugan, hand, just like your hand, bank, for those out there writing down and doing research. But the BCCI scandal, that was a huge one. But, Mr. Nelson, we also had the Vatican Bank. Remember how they robbed the Vatican Bank? And, in fact, I know Mr. Nelson and I talk about this a lot, but, Godfather 3, since we have Kamala Harris running for office, she used to have a thing with Willie Brown, right? Well, Willie Brown's in the first 5 minutes of Godfather 3, but more importantly, Godfather 3 shows Michael Corleone becoming from a mafia don to a legitimate businessman worldwide. And that movie also showed you why we had 3 popes in 5 years, and it's all centered around the banking scandal. An honest pope wasn't going to survive in the Vatican, and they clearly see that in Godfather 3. But, you also had one of the big things, Mr. Nelson, was under the deregulation laws under Reagan, and Clinton was just as complicit. Basically, you had private banks and commercial banks that were always separate. And then they passed the laws allowing these banks to merge. So when these banks would now go out and make risky commercial ventures, they can cover their losses by taking money from the private banks, our accounts. And today it's even worse because even under the Obama administration, laws were passed by Congress where now, and I should go back to Barack Hussein Obama because I'm not a fan of Ronald Reagan, but at least Ronald Reagan, his administration indicted and convicted something like 700 bankers when he was president. Under Barack Hussein Obama, in spite of what happened in 2007, 2008, we have to look forward. We can't look backwards. I think a total of 2 bankers were convicted under Obama, and those were small-time bankers compared to the people who were the major players. So under Barack Hussein Obama, there was a law passed now, Mr. Nelson, where
here is some information about saving
in 2007, 2008. They can get the money directly out of your account and my account. That's what's going on today. So while you're being distracted with the minutia and the things that are easy to distract the masses that have no personal effect or bearing on your lives, these are things that are going to affect you. So I tell you, get your financial house in order. Reduce that credit card. If you have it, cut it up. I mean, we're living on credit. We're living on borrowed time. And as Malcolm Hess would have said, the chickens are coming home to roost, Mr. Nelson. And just one last thing, just to give you an idea is, even though I just criticized the Obama administration for doing little for the bankers, Mr. Nelson, do you realize in just 1 year in office, the Trump administration, when it comes to the big, I'm talking not somebody shoplifting or stealing on a corner. I'm talking the big boys and the high-rise white-collar crime. In just 1 year in office, Mr. Nelson, under Donald Trump, the prosecution of white-collar criminals has decreased by 98% since the Obama administration. These are people running the White House now. They're running Congress, and they got their boys in the Supreme Court. I mean, after all, we know one of the last appointments on the Supreme Court, he's a gambling junkie. That's what you got running the country now, Mr. Nelson.
We can't dispute that. But again, we got some folks who want to talk to you. 800-450-7876. Lance has been home for a while, calling from New York on line 3. Lance, you're on with Mark from Anaheim. Is Lance there on line 3? I'm not hearing Lance. So, okay, let's move on then. Let's go to line 1. Maurice is reaching out to us from Austin, Texas. Maurice?
Hello, this is Maury. How y'all doing?
Good.
Excellent, sir.
good. I got one quick rare black history and one question. And I'm not listening to you. I just called in because I heard you on there, and I just wanted to hear your answer to this. My mom she's the one that integrated the dorms at the University of Texas in Austin. So there you go, Maudie Yates. And the question is, I've been doing research since I've been listening to you and Baba Gregory, and I've been reading the Corpus Hermeticum. Now, it always says in there that something greater has to be present to give you something great. Now, going back with all these people that have been ruling and taking over everything, do you have any comments on who is giving them the plan? Because I know all the monarchs and everything back then, inbred and all that. Who is giving them the plans to coordinate everything? You have the Club of Rome, you have the Bohemian Grove, you have a whole bunch of these societies, but who is helping them coordinate all this?
Yeah, that's a good and a tough question. Any answer I would give you would be speculation, but I would have to speculate and say you're talking there are two major groups that I consider the front runners in this. One is China. A lot of folks don't realize the Chinese were running their mafias long before Europe ever created theirs. So you got the Chinese triad, and you also have what they call themselves the blue bloods from Bulgaria, which I guess now is called Roma, but Bulgaria, Transylvania, Lithuania, Latvia, parts of Germany, parts of Russia, Austria, Hungary, and parts of Germany from the old Ottoman Empire. And they may use the guise of being Christians, but they're anything but Christians. They're Luciferians. So when I look at a movie like Underworld with Kate Beckinsale, especially the first one, it shows the vampires versus the lichens or werewolves. I'm not looking at vampires and lichens. I'm looking at that old family bloodlines that have been quietly amassing wealth for the last 50 years while everybody was fighting the Cold War. And with the end of the Cold War, these families now have reemerged to basically take over the world domination. So I would say the Chinese triad and the old family, what they call themselves the old blue bloodlines of Europe.
All right. Thanks, Maurice. Thanks for your call. 800-450-7876. Let's try Lance one more time because I know he's been holding for a while on line 3. Lance, are you there?
Yes.
All right. You're on with Mark.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. It's a pleasure. Yes, sir. My question is pertaining to the conflict that's going on between Venezuela and the United States.
Yes, sir.
I'm also concerned about Guyana, which is bordered with Venezuela. That's where I was born. Right now, they're supposed to, Exxon has a contract with Guyana right now.
Exxon Mobil.
Correct. And they're supposed to be exporting several thousands of barrels a day sometime next year. Do you have anything to say pertaining to this conflict that's going on there?
This is personal for me. I coach surfers. I've got surfers in South America. I've got surfers in Central America. I've got surfers in Mexico. Okay, and it really frustrates me when I hear a lot of people out there, especially on social media, giving their 2 cents and don't have a damn clue about how much the Democratic elected officials in those particular countries were later overthrown by people who the United States trains at the School of Americas in Fort Benning, and then have them go back there to set up a fascist regime. Now, specifically regarding Venezuela. Okay, Mr. Nelson, I came back on your show back in the 90s because I used to hear a lot of people bashing about the Mexican immigrants during the whole NAFTA thing, and I have to remind them that we have Negritos down in Mexico. Negrito is black. You don't hear the mainstream media ever tell you that the only time Venezuela is a problem for the U.S. is when they don't have a white president in the office. That's why they went after Hugo Chavez. He identified himself as a Negrito. India, the current president who they're about to overthrow, he's a Negrito. I came on your show, Mr. Nelson, back in the 90s and reminded your listeners, even a country like Argentina, Argentine literally means as white as silver. The people who are natives to those countries, they're not running that country. It's white Europeans that have fled to South America and Central America and taken over those countries. That's why when you look at a novella on television, you see just as many white, blonde hair, and blue eyes on these so-called Spanish-speaking shows as you do see the few browns who are natives. So as far as Venezuela goes, Venezuela has been a problem for a long time. The United States, Mr. Nelson, I alluded earlier, remember I mentioned Jim Jones? Jim Jones is Guyana. So to the caller there, since you're a native of Venezuela, how far is Guyana from Venezuela, sir?
No, I'm from Guyana.
Okay.
Guyana borders with Venezuela.
Exactly.
So
now you know the real reason why they had the temple down in Jonestown, because you're laughing. Yes, I'm serious. It's a heart attack. All those vehicles down there were U.S. Army military vehicles in that compound.
Yes, I have my suspicion, because the area that Jim Jones was located is rich in manganese.
There it is.
And a lot of gold and everything.
And Dick Gregory used to always tell listeners the importance of manganese. And also, I got to be careful how I say this, because I don't want to get any of my surfers in trouble. But I have surfers from Colombia, and I firmly believe right now we already have U.S. personnel in Colombia waiting to go into Venezuela. I would also suspect we have U.S. personnel who have been in Colombia for a while that have been going into Venezuela and creating so-called terrorist attacks to make it look as if the government is soft on these terrorists. Basically, what you call agents provocateurs. But I think Colombia is going to be the stepping stage for U.S. personnel. And also, by putting active duty personnel down at the U.S.-Mexico border, that affords them a more rapid response to the Venezuelan area. They're going to take that leader out. And as Trump already said, all options are on the table. So, I mean, the only difference between Trump and other U.S. presidents, Trump doesn't hide it from me. He just comes right out and tell you the leader of Venezuela is going down. And it's a sad thing because, folks, a lot of it has to do with the fact that he's not white, blonde hair, and blue eyes. So here we come up to another break.
All right, hold that thought right there. Stay with us, Lance, if you have a follow-up. 800-450-7876 gets you in. Your call's coming next. It's a big show. It rolls out from FS, folks. Our guest is Mark from Anaheim. The number to call to speak to Mark is 800-450-7876. Before we get back to him, just let me remind you, coming up next week, you're going to hear from Sister Shahrzad Ali. She's going to be our special guest. So tell your friends if you're in the DMV to give us a call, or at least keep their radios locked on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL. So let's go back to Mark. Mark?
Yeah, Mr. Nuss, I don't know if you were this, but see, I can never hear you until you ask me if I'm still there. Going back to that caller's question on Venezuela, I just want you to know, because I hear a lot of black folks talking a lot of stupid stuff when it comes to the immigrants. These are not immigrants. These are refugees. Just like in Europe, those generally are folks of color whose countries have been taken over by people who are not looking out for their best interests, and they'll be killed in their countries. Folks coming up here from down south are generally people of color whose countries have been taken over by those who are not looking out for them. In Brazil right now, you got a guy in Brazil who idolizes Trump who's actually got death squads going out and hunting down folks that look like you and me, Mr. Nelson, because they still live in the Amazon jungles, and that's prime real estate for lumber and for major mineral resources. That's what's going on in South America right now, okay? So this crap that you're hearing in the U.S. media, that's what it is, it's crap. Now, out here in California, we don't have too many 7-Elevens that still have gas stations, but there was a time when most of the 7-Elevens had gas stations. Well, they carry Venezuelan gas. For those of you more familiar, you probably see Citgo gas. Back in December, I believe it was like the second week of December, ExxonMobil actually tried to set up a situation that would upset the U.S. government, or I should say upset the U.S. population, to allow us to go into Venezuela. It didn't work. The media wasn't able to use it to their advantage, but basically the Venezuelan Navy warded off a major ExxonMobil ship that was trying to come into that area. So there's a lot of drama going on right now down there. Most of it you're not hearing up here because I don't care. There's no such thing as a so-called liberal media in this country. I mean, you got 5 corporations now that control 95% of all media, and trust me, the owners are not liberal. But, you know, you repeat the lie long enough, it becomes a standard here. I hate to say it, but I see. Oh, then they did say. I should say this too. They did the same thing in Brazil. In Brazil, you had a female who was a strong leader, and they took her down for things that weren't even against the law to replace her with the guy you have now, who was a former Army officer. And as far as he's concerned, he wants to take Brazil back to the way it was 50 years ago. So if you want folks when an idea was coming to Brazil, it's already starting in Brazil, go back and see who led Brazil back in 50 years ago. So, when you have leaders
Mark,
like
let me interrupt you and ask you this, though, about Brazil. He got a lot of black votes as well, the guy who's in there now.
I'm sorry, you say that again? He has what?
He got a lot of black folks voted for him.
Okay, so you have ignorant blacks in Brazil, just like you have ignorant blacks here. Don't you have ignorant blacks here who publicly go out and endorse Donald Trump? What's your point?
Yeah, I just want to
point
that out.
Even during World War II in Harlem, something like 65% of the blacks in Harlem supported Hitler. There's even a book that documents it, and this was a book written in the 40s. So, ignorant blacks everywhere. Ignorant blacks are ignorant blacks. That doesn't mean anything because they supported him. Seriously. What you have is, because something I didn't talk about because I was really focusing on the kleptocracy aspect, what you also have that goes along with this kleptocracy is authoritarianism. And there may be a lot of blacks who supported Barack Hussein Obama because he was black, but they saw him as a punk. We have people in this country, Mr. Nelson, who they don't care how dirty the person is. They don't care how corrupt the person is. They don't care how racist or how misogynist the person is. If the person sounds like he is going to be strong and he's not going to take no crap from any other country, these folks will follow him. And that's what you got going on around the world. In the Philippines, homeboys killed thousands upon thousands of so-called drug dealers. And now he's talking about declaring war on Mindanao and all this other stuff and war on women. In fact, he tells the guys, his army, when they go to Mindanao, they can have 3 women apiece. And if you really want to start them, shoot them in the private. I'm not making this stuff up. The war on women worldwide is really what's going on. But we talk about the war on color. But trust me, Mr. Nelson, the war on women worldwide right now is unbelievable. So when Donald Trump says he can grab women by the pee, and you still have 51% of the white women who voted in this country voted for Trump, does that mean, well, Donald Trump must like women because so many women voted for him? That argument is no more valid than you telling me blacks voted for some guy down in Brazil who's going to kill them. People always volunteer to go to the slaughterhouse. Ignorance is ignorance. So I hope I answered that one.
You sure did. And we're going to keep moving.
And I've got a lot of service from Brazil. And here's the thing, Mr. Nelson. They don't even realize they're black till they come to the U.S. and surf here in California. Then they find out they're black.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm just telling you.
800-450-7876. Ernest is next. He's on line 2 calling from B-More. Ernest, you're on with Mark from Anaheim.
In that Jesse Smollett case, I knew almost immediately that he wasn't telling the truth. And I think the police that was investigating knew that he wasn't telling the truth. So they went through this long investigation and talking about the cameras and all this. And Eddie Johnson is a real Sambo, in my opinion, because he didn't have to put on this stage show. Although Jesse Smollett was wrong, he's going to be indicted and he's going to go to jail. He might be charged twice with a federal crime and a city crime. However, when John Burge, do you remember John Burge, Mark?
I'm not familiar with John Burge.
John Burge was a commander in the Chicago Police Department during the 1970s and 1980s. They had a black site where they were tortured. They tortured over 100 people that hadn't proved they'd been involved in crime, but charged and convicted anyway because of the torture, the electric shocks, the bagging. And they charged him with that in 1991. But in 1993, they couldn't convict him because the statute of limitations has expired. He spent 4 years for lying to the FBI. Mayor Daley was the state's attorney. He didn't prosecute him. You can look it up. John Burge, Chicago Police Commander. They never talked about anything like that. This police commissioner never said anything about it. never said anything about Laquan McDonald. He didn't come out with, and all of those police on the scene when Laquan McDonald was shot 16 times, if they made a report saying that he approached them with a knife and tried to cut somebody, they were all false reports. But we didn't hear anything about that, and only one person, I think, to my knowledge, got charged and fired.
Well, let me jump in and ask both of you guys this, since you're both ex-cops. Do you think they said they had 12 detectives working on this particular case? Is that appropriate, or was it overkill, or was it just right for an alleged crime like this?
What do you think, Mark?
I wasn't going to share this, but, you're bringing this up, so I'm just going to tell you folks, okay? I'm just going to tell you. From day one, when I heard about the story, I thought the story stunk.
Me too.
This is what I truly believe. I kind of alluded to it earlier. I didn't want to get into this. I think that the original victim was set up. What I'm telling you is he's going to go down for making a false crime, but I think he was led into doing it. That's what I was trying to tell you. In other words, he thought he was given good advice by people who he thought was his allies, and they were setting him up to go down so they can get him off that show. Because as I asked before, where the hell do two guys... Now, there were no TV cameras that saw this guy. So how is it they found two guys from Ghana that they can interview who come out now and says, we're the ones who helped him? Where the hell did they just come out of nowhere? And now they're not being prosecuted because they've become witnesses for the prosecution? This whole story stinks. There's more to this story than anybody's being told.
And they wasn't from Ghana. They were supposed to be from Nigeria.
I don't care where they're from. The point is, how the hell did anybody find them?
Right.
Okay?
Now,
if these guys got paid off by this actor, why is it all of a sudden both of them are in the cops? There's more to the story. I think this actor is an idiot. I think he was having problems, and I think somebody put a bug in his ear to do this, and he didn't realize the people putting the bug in his ear are the ones who were hoping to see him go down, and he's going down for it.
Yeah, he's going down. But my point is this, that Eddie Johnson came up through that Chicago Police Department. By the way, it was one of the worst police departments in the history of policing, in my opinion. They're right at the top, killing black people. And they went in and killed the Black Panthers, Chicago police. We're still talking about them with their racist attitudes against blacks and minorities. So this Eddie Johnson had this big, when I saw him this one, I say, well, that's who Dr. Claude Anderson's talking about.
Yeah, it's pretty sad when I see a guy like Eddie Johnson now is going to act like, oh, how disgusted I am that a black man would use a noose to do this. Come on, dude. I know the history of Chicago Police Department. Chicago Police is in my top 5 of most corrupt police departments on the planet. Seriously.
And mine too, and you are absolutely correct.
New York is number 2, second only to New Orleans, and Chicago ties for 3 and 4th with a city I ain't going to mention right now. But LA is not in the top 5, I have to say, but they in the top 10. So I'm just telling you, I was impressed. It's sad because this commander or whatever he is now, deputy chief or whatever he is today, he's speaking for the black people. Come on, folks. I know the history of Chicago. I don't hang out. I remember when, I used to run through Cabrini Greens when the Blackstone Rangers ran that area, and now it's white students going to college, okay? I know all about, well, hey, that's where Obama came from, right? That's where the Council on Foreign Relations is located, right?
Yes.
Folks, I'm telling you, this is being used for a bigger agenda, and I'm not giving any defense to this actor. I'm telling you, I believe he was set up to do this. And like an idiot, he fell for it, and he's going to go down for it while the main players behind the scenes are laughing and taking us all the way to the bank.
And I'm going to tell you this, too. When they found out or suspected, and being a detective and being in the police anytime, you can almost feel by asking questions that when a person is not being truthful. All they had to do was put them on a lie box.
Well, my thing was, the first thing that stung for me? Okay, I grew up, like I said, I spent my first 5 years wandering the streets of New York and Harlem, but I spent the next 7 years of my childhood down in Jim Crow, rural South Carolina, where my grandmother had the door shut at sundown because of the Klan, the John Birch Society, and White Citizens Council.
Right.
And I don't know of anybody who had a noose put around his neck where that noose wasn't used. I don't know anybody who had a noose put around his neck where that noose didn't have a rope attached to it. So that right there for me was the one thing that, for my background, that's what blew all the bells for me, and I just didn't want to get into it. But I'm telling you, folks, there's more to this story.
Yeah,
there's a lot more to this story.
And when we put a noose around your neck, him being a light-complected melanin guy,
right,
it would be some kind of mark around his neck, a red mark or something. They're not just going to put a noose around your neck like a tie.
Well, they're not going to put a noose around your neck and not use it. That's my whole thing.
I mean, it's a waste of time.
I mean, they would just drag him like they did the brother in Texas, okay?
Yeah. And when I looked at his neck and didn't see any kind of marks or scars or even during a beating, the so-called beating, no marks or scars and no bruises and no...
Hey, brother, we're coming up to a break, but after the break, I got a question for you, okay?
All right. 800-450-7876. You mentioned we're coming up on a break. We've got to allow some show.
On Washington, D.C.'s 1450 WOL Radio and live around the world on WOLDCnews.com.
And thank you for staying with us, folks. 6 o'clock straight up. 800-450-7876. Our guest is Mark from Anaheim. We take calls if you just reach out to us. Before we left, we're speaking with Ernest in Bmore. So, Mark, I'm going to let you finish your conversation with Ernest.
You still there, Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, I'm still here.
I'm still here.
So my question is this, okay? Because you know me, I was mentored by these white Aryans, so I know how they think, all right? And when I heard this whole story, it reminds me of a David Fincher movie. For you guys out there who have no idea what I'm talking about, see the movie Gone Girl by David Fincher, if you think you know what's going on. My whole thing is this would be a great David Fincher movie, okay? Just hear me out here, brother. Let's say the black actor was indeed confronted and attacked and had a noose put around his neck by two white guys wearing Make America Great Again hats. So on his end, that's what he saw, not knowing this whole thing is a setup. Do you hear what I'm trying to tell you?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, they make it convenient that the people seen on video that bought the rope are two black guys.
Absolutely.
See what I'm telling you? Folks, There's a lot more to this story. This goes a lot deeper than you guys really... Hey, call me cynical, but I was trained by these folks. I think the way they do. I know how they think and operate. There's more to this story. Because why would this brother go on and on for so long with this story if even he didn't believe it? Unless he's totally crazy and schizophrenic.
Right. You're absolutely right. I agree with you.
And I'm telling you, I've seen it before, okay? Trust me. I've been involved with people that you don't even want to know what they will do to take you down. So for you guys out there who don't really know how white folks will go so far, see the movie Gone Girl by David Fincher. Tyler Perry's in that movie, too. He plays an outstanding lawyer. But I'm just telling you, when you think you know, you don't know. Well, I would not be surprised if it was two white guys. How convenient that there's no cameras in that area where it happened. Okay? The actual attack is not on film.
Yeah,
Let's just say this brother was confronted by two white boys, and meanwhile, two black boys just happened to buy the rope someplace else, and they're all in on it. Okay? I'm just telling you. Okay?
Right. Let me ask you one.
Now I sound like Dick Gregory, right?
Let me ask
Just make it quick because we got a bunch of folks who want to talk to Mark.
In reference to Jim Jones.
Yes, sir.
I read somewhere where the people that went down with Jim Jones, as soon as they got to their destination, they were handcuffed and they started drugging them. And then they put them to work as slaves down there before they killed them.
There was some of that, but not the majority of them. The majority of them were willing participants who really believed that Jim Jones was their savior. But there was a lot of subjugation and a lot of blind loyalty. Mm-hmm. You know, that's a cult figure.
Right.
And I hate it when people try to say you drank the Kool-Aid, because one, it wasn't Kool-Aid, it was Flavor Aid, and two, by even using that statement is disrespecting all the people who died there. Black folks don't commit suicide wholesale. Most of those people had needle injections and or gunshot wounds, and they were poisoned. They didn't voluntarily commit suicide.
That's what I heard, too. Yeah.
And Leo Ryan was a California senator who went down there to investigate. and a CIA asset who was a former Marine is the one who shot and killed Leo Ryan while he was down there investigating it. There's a lot more to that story, too, that people still don't know.
Right. And thank you for the information.
Yes, sir.
And Mark, somebody just tweeted me and said that Jussie Smollett's brother was a late Russian Jew.
That's correct, yes. Well, Jesse,
he was born where? I thought he was born in Brazil or somewhere.
No, you talking about the actor from Empire?
Yeah.
He and his sister, their mom and dad. Well, I believe the dad is a Russian Jew, if I'm not mistaken.
Interesting. 800-450-7876. We got people. We got people all across the country want to talk to you. By the way, let's go down to D.C. now. Darnell's on line 4. Darnell, you on with Mark from Anaheim?
Hey, thanks, Carl, for taking the call. Hi, Mark. How are you?
Happy to be here, sir.
Yes, earlier.
I know I'm going to hear about that because putting that theory out there, but trust me, man, it's possible. I'm sorry. Go ahead, brother.
Okay. Earlier you were talking about the banking industry, the two acts with the Glass-Steagall Act and the Volcker Rule.
Yes, sir.
And I'm kind of want a little insight from your background, from a political science background. Two of my friends that are they're doing very well in cybersecurity. One company is about $300 million in sales. The other one has $2 million in sales. And both of them are multi-millionaires by, doing cybersecurity contracts with the government. And recently, in the past 3 to 5 years, they've been doing work in San Diego, Colombia, and Argentina. And both of them opened up bank accounts in both countries. And when Trump was running for president, he said that the 1% moved their money out of this country.
They always do. In fact, if you check this out, since you're bringing this up, as I'm speaking to you, there's major protests going on in Haiti. Right now, Haitian government has just arrested a bunch of white boys down there who happen to be from the U.S. who all had all kinds of guns on them, and they won't answer the questions of that government because they work for a so-called private contracting company who has ties to the U.S. government, so they think they're above the law. But when you talked about offshore bank accounts, this goes back even to when you look at the movie with Tom Cruise, The Firm. And they were showing you how the Cayman Islands. Now, the difference was when Tom Cruise, he was able to find the evidence because they left a paper trail. Today, everything's done by computer, so there ain't no paper trail. But more importantly, when you look at what's going on right here in Nevada, even under the Obama administration, Nevada banks are allowing Russians and all kinds of criminals from around the world to deposit their money in those banks, and those Nevada banks do not report it to the federal government. More importantly, after the 9/11 World Trade Center bombings, most FBI agents are white-collar criminal investigators. They're not the guys you see that's doing the glamorous stuff out on the streets. They're just office folks going after following the money trail. But George W. Bush had something like 75% of those agents pulled away from white-collar criminal investigations because everything now is the global war on terrorism. So nobody's watching the banks. Also, the banking has such great lobbying. They were able, even when Obama got laws passed, they were lobbying where those laws don't go into effect until years later. And now with Trump in the White House, they're not even going to enforce it because Trump has put in people who don't want to have federal rules or regulations. So there's nobody overseeing or overwatching them. So they don't necessarily have to go out and put their money in offshore bank accounts anymore because I'll just tell you the state of Nevada is number one for not reporting to the federal government when they have suspicious activity. You have guys right now in Nevada who live in other countries that can't even travel to places like Canada because they're on criminal watch lists, and they have their money in bank account in Nevada. But it's not just Nevada. Downtown L.A., one of the biggest building complexes in downtown L.A., 85% of the property in that building is controlled by mob families and others and all throughout Europe. Same thing in New York City. Same thing with every major city, even down here in Huntington Beach.
And it's like you said, since the Maxine Waters is going to take over the Housing Financial Services Committee, she won't have a chance to go after the bank because the statute of limitations is over. There you go. 2008 crisis. But my main question is, you said, about the stock market. If I wanted to take probably 25% of my money out, what countries do you think that would be the safest for moving my money over to?
I can't give that kind of advice on a radio show, and I'll just say because banking now is global and banking is they're all tied in. I don't see any banking today. Here's the thing: if the U.S. government was able to get Swiss banks and others to change their policies when it comes to private investment, and yet we don't enforce the same rules here at home. Banking's dirty. I don't recommend the stock market. That's a Ponzi scheme. And as far as offshore bank accounts, I wouldn't be able to recommend. I can't give that kind of recommendation.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thanks for your honesty.
But Mr. Nelson, I want to say he brought up Maxine Waters.
Mm-hmm.
You realize in the last 7 days, sir, you know who's the new prodigy girl from? Well, let me rephrase, because I don't want anybody to take this the wrong way, but that's just how I speak. The new prodigy woman from New York who just got elected in this blue wave, right? And everybody talks about her. You do realize that she's now comparing the United States to the Weimar Republic. Meanwhile, in the last 7 days, you did realize Maxine Waters called Donald Trump a dictator, right?
Yeah.
But these are things I said on your radio show back in November of 2012. It took them 7 years to come online with this? Oh, by the way, meanwhile, while I'm talking to you, I'm having a hard time hearing you because guess what, Mr. Nelson? It's pouring down rain. We are now in week number 5 of rain in Southern California with 4 more weeks to go, but there's no climate change.
Well, at least there's no drought no more, right? That's all the rain you guys
Not as mudslides.
Yeah.
And potholes.
Let's keep rolling because, like I said, I got a bunch of folks who want to talk to you. 800-450-7876. Kiki's joining us from Iowa on line 1. Kiki, you're on with Mark from Anaheim.
Hey, Mark. How are you?
Hi, Kiki.
Hey, Mark. And thank you, Carl, for taking my call. Mark, my question for you is, can you please expound on, because I've been researching some things about the national emergency. I don't even know if it was officially even declared or not, because when the government was shut down, they had all these different time clocks of, day 1, day 2. But with the national emergency, they haven't done that. So I'm not sure if it's in effect right now. But I know that he's been saying it for the past, I think, maybe week or 2. And when I bring it up to others of, the powers that come into play with the national emergency, I'm looked at as crazy. Like, oh, no, that would never happen. So can you just tell the people what type of powers this man has if he was to officially declare a national emergency?
Okay. So, Mr. Nelson will attest to this because, I won't lie to the listeners. And by the way, listeners, for you, I usually start the show off by telling you this. I don't want you to believe anything I tell you. Do your own research and make up your own minds. And, of course, we got a break coming up. So
Yeah, we got a break. So I don't want you to start this conversation and then after. And Kiki, I thank you for your call. 800-450-7876, the magic numbers to get you in. We'll take your calls from Mark next on FM. Hey, thank you for staying with us, folks. 800-450-7876 to speak to Mark from Anaheim. Before we left, we were speaking with Kiki in Iowa. She had a question for you, Mark. I'll let you respond.
Oh, I couldn't hear you. What you were saying, so what am I?
Yeah, I think I just told you. Yeah.
Am I responding to Kiki?
Sure.
Okay, so here's the thing, folks. Kiki brings up a good point. National emergency has been declared. You just haven't seen Donald Trump put it into effect. So what I was going to say about Mr. Nelson, because I know he won't lie to you, and he'll attest to what I'm saying here. Mr. Nelson, did I not just joke to you on Monday that unless Herr Trump establishes the Trump News Network, then I guess I will be doing a radio show with you on Thursday?
You did say that.
So, Mr. Nelson, you're in the radio industry. Does Donald Trump right now not have the power to take over every radio station and television station in this country as we speak?
He sure does.
So, folks, what Kiki is telling you is the national emergency was declared by Donald Trump. Now, he may have focused on the border, but by declaring a national emergency, you have that's what Maxine Waters is telling you, folks. You now have a dictator in the White House. This show I'm doing with Mr. Nelson right now can cost me my freedom. Because under a national emergency, it's not what you do once he declares it. He can go back retroactive. Any show I've done in the past that he considers a threat to his security, I could be put into a black site that was suggested earlier. I'm not making this up. I'm not being hyperbolic, folks. You have a dictator in the White House. The media is not telling you this. Donald Trump right now can shut down every television station and radio station in this country. The only thing you would be allowed to listen to is Trump News Network. That's the power he has, and that's the power that was given to him. He just hasn't put it to an effect yet. Donald Trump tomorrow can order every black person in the U.S. Armed Forces to leave the U.S. military because that's an executive order. That's not in the Constitution. That's not in the Bill of Rights. Every black, every brown, every woman could be told to leave the military, and the only people you'll have in the armed forces are whites. He has that power. This is why I stopped doing radio shows with Mr. Nelson after the World Trade Center, because when George Bush effected that whole thing, when they passed that law after the World Trade Center bombing, I knew that I could be arrested as a domestic terrorist. Not because I've done something wrong, but because I'm telling you facts. That makes you a threat to national security. As far as the folks who don't want you to know these facts, I'm sticking my neck out coming on this show right now. Big time. So that's what Kiki was asking, and that's what I'm telling you folks. They just haven't gone into effect yet because he hasn't started enacting it. You folks have no idea what you did by allowing Donald Trump into the White House. And for all you white folks out there, how your tax returns doing since you supported him? Okay? The average person right now getting their tax return funds is finding 10% less money than last year. But he was looking out for you too, huh? Because you folks don't realize this ain't a black or white thing. When the John Birch Society under Ronald Reagan was in the White House, all in all told you there was a plan to round up 25 million blacks. That's every black in this country. Now you got the John Birch Society back in the White House from Iran-Contra, including the Attorney General, William Barr, who got all the Iran-Contra boys pardoned by George Herbert Walker Bush. That's who the Attorney General is going to decide what you get to hear or see in the Mueller report. These folks got it all. They got Congress, they got the Supreme Court, they got the White House, they got the Attorney General, and if they want to right now, they got me.
So you say we may not see everything? Well, I know we're not going to see everything in the Mueller report.
Hey, in fact, I wouldn't be surprised if Manafort gets pardoned by Trump. Or whoever else is in the White House if Trump should be forced to leave office. All these guys you see, I could see Flynn and Manafort and everybody, Spicer, all of them get pardoned. Seriously. I'm laughing, but I'm serious. I got to laugh because if I didn't laugh, I'd go crazy.
Mark, I want to go back to Kiki's question about the state of emergency. What if something jumps off at the border? Say,
you mean something that could happen because it was manufactured to happen at the border?
Yeah.
Sure. All it would take right now.
What would be the ramifications?
All it would take right now is from somebody from Venezuela trying to get across the border who was stopped at the border with a large number of drugs, weapons, or even an explosive device. And this would give Trump all the incentive he needs to show how dangerous and how we need this wall and how we need to have more martial law. Yeah. Seriously. I mean, for you folks think we don't do it? When Kennedy was president, he wouldn't go along with the plan. There was a plan called Operation Northwood. Operation Northwood was a plan to blow up a U.S. commercial airliner with about 275 American citizens on it and make it look like Castro did it. They don't give a damn about killing you to make something to get their political agenda. You think I'm making it up? You look up Operation Northwood. That's who you got in the White House. Those were John Birch Society boys, too, by the way. The Curtis LeMays and all those guys who couldn't stand Kennedy, so they took him out. John Birch killed Kennedy, John Birch killed RFK, and John Birch killed MLK. Hey, you guys don't realize that's who you got running the White House right now. I just call a spade a spade.
800-450-7876. Ron's joining us from West Palm Beach in Florida. Ron, you're on with Mark from Anaheim. Ron's on line 5, by the way.
Hello?
Yes, you're on the air, Ron.
Hi, Ron. Hey, Ron, don't you have relatives in Venezuela also?
Yeah, yes, I do.
See, what do I know?
She's worried, and because even though she's not a Maduro supporter, she supports him because she knows what's coming. Because she went through this in the 2002, the failed coup attempt against Hugo Chavez.
And Hugo Chavez was also in Negrito, India.
Yes.
So,
and,
since this is close to home for you, was I making it up when I told the listeners anytime there's somebody in office who supports the dark-skinned people, they're the ones labeled as a communist, a socialist, and a threat to United States stability?
That's correct.
And also, since they mentioned ExxonMobil, folks don't even realize it right now, but see, Venezuela has a major oil reserve, greater than Saudi Arabia. What Venezuela doesn't have is its own ability to refine its oil. And that's what keeps the hangman's noose around their neck from other countries. It's not looking good. And I know, brother, you know better than anybody right now listening to the show, except for the other caller who has a close. Dude, I got servers in Venezuela, and I'm not even communicating with them right now because I don't want to get them in trouble. I'm afraid that me coming on this radio show might cause them problems. I've got servers around the world right now that I haven't really been communicating with because I'm afraid they might lose their sponsors being associated with me. This is what's going on, folks. But I'm sorry, brother. Did you have a question?
Yes, sir. I have two questions. My first question is about the history of this country as far as the economic crash. Usually a Democrat becomes in power.
Right.
If there's an economic crash that happens before the election, which one of these Democrats, that's Democratic nominees who are running, has more royal blood than Donald Trump? And my second question is, can you elaborate more about the Muslim congresswoman who got attacked from both sides about AIPAC?
Okay.
And, why are we defending Israel so much if the John Birch Society at the end of the day wants to destroy it?
Okay.
And I just take my...
Well, one, let me just say I have no political party affiliations. I have no political organization affiliations. So when I speak for myself. I'm neither a Democratic nor a Republican. And the only person I would have even remotely considered supporting in 2016 was Jim Webb, and he dropped out early. Thus far, I haven't seen anybody that I would even remotely support in this so-called presidential election. And regarding the royal blood, for you folks who realize that, it's always the person with the most royal blood who's running that ends up becoming the president of the United States. Hey, Hillary and Donald Trump are related by blood. You know, I just call a spade a spade. I don't know because there's not enough people who have put their name in the hat in the ring right now. And generally speaking, historically, those who put their names in the hat this early in the race are never the ones still in the race by the time the midterms of the election year have come around. So it's far too early to say at this point as regards to the Democratic Party if the Republicans allow this crash of the economic to go down on their watch and then use the Democrats to clean it up. As far as AIPAC, okay. Now I got to be careful so I don't get Mr. Nelson in trouble since this is the show he's doing at a radio station. I'll just say this. The love for Jerusalem and Israel is a phony love, okay? And it's really interesting because the John Birch Society were the ones who supported the Nazis, whereas the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, the Ku Klux Klan, they didn't really have a lot to do with the Nazis. Klan and Nazis were not the same folks. Early 70s, you started seeing a little bit of a change because there were so many laws being passed in the late 60s, early 70s that supposedly was giving blacks their rights and women's their rights, even though to this day we still don't have an Equal Rights Amendment. White males felt as if they were the oppressed men because they were the wrong color and the wrong plumbing. So what you started seeing this backlash where white Protestants, generally with the Klan, and white Catholics, generally with the Nazis, merging together and forming an alliance with neoconservatives out of Israel. These folks are not Jewish. They're Jewish in ethnicity, if that's what they want to call it, but not as far as religion. And they're conservatives. They, like guys like Mitt Romney, went to school with, Netanyahu, okay? And so by the time Reagan was running for office, you had this so-called moral majority that was supporting Reagan, and then calling Israel. Suddenly Israel was their great ally. They use Israel as an excuse to justify their presence in the so-called Middle East, which I still say is Africa, because white people built the Suez Canal and split that part off from Africa. It's still Africa, so I don't use that term Middle East. They just rename stuff. Somalia is Southwest Asia, okay? And blacks in Somalia, blacks in Ethiopia are the darkest Caucasians on the planet. So I'm going to answer this question when we come back, but see, I really wish folks would ask a simple question because this is a very difficult question to answer. But I'll finish AIPAC on the other side, sir.
All right. Thank you. 800-450-7876. Ron, I thank you for your call. We'll take calls for Mark from Anaheim next on FM 95.9 and AM 1450. WOL, where information is power.
Introducing new life-proof, slip-resistant wood-look porcelain tile from the Home Depot. Starting at just $1.99 a square foot, it's 50% more slip-resistant than ordinary tile. It's waterproof, stain-proof, scratch-resistant, and works indoors or out. Step confidently in your kitchen, bathroom, patio, or any area of your home with new life-proof, slip-resistant porcelain tile. Just $1.99 a square foot. Only at the Home Depot. More saving, more doing. Selection varies by store. Slip resistance based on tiles that meet a DCOF less than or equal to 0.42.
Sprint gives you the best of both worlds. A network built for unlimited and a great price. Our LTE Advanced network is now up to 2 times faster than before, and our total LTE coverage has increased by 30%. There's never been a better time to switch. Visit a Sprint store, sprint.com, or call 800-SPRINT-1 and make the switch to Sprint today.
Faster compared to 4G LTE. LTE Advanced requires a capable device. 4G LTE data coverage with roaming coverage and offer not available everywhere.
By Nisnik Behavioral Health.
Celebrating Black History. Behind the Lens, Hollywood's independent filmmakers on 1450 and 95.9 WOL. Spencer Williams was an actor, writer, director, and producer of African American or race films. He is mostly recognized for his role as Andy Brown in the television version of Amos and Andy. Williams learned theater at an early age as a call boy for theatrical producer Oscar Hammerstein I and learned comedy from Burt Williams, a black vaudevillian actor. In 1940, Spencer Williams was given an opportunity to write and direct a film. The Blood of Jesus was a religious drama that had great success in its mostly black audiences. Williams died of kidney failure in 1969. 14 years after his death, a number of his race films were discovered, and his work is being reevaluated as a pioneer for its time.
Celebrating Black History, Behind the Lens, Hollywood's independent filmmakers. Brought to you by Bridges Public Charter School.
For news that's close to home. Close to home. Listen, WOL.
Folks, our guest is Mark from Anaheim, and the number to call to speak to Mark is 800-450-7876. We're speaking from West Palm Beach. That's who we're speaking with, someone from West Palm Beach. Anyway, Ron. So, Mark, I'm going to let you finish responding to Ron's questions.
Basically, what you have is this, folks. The Wahhabis do not represent the majority of Muslims. They're a far right-wing fringe. The far right-wing Protestant evangelicals in this country do not represent Christianity. They're a far right-wing fringe. The John Birch Society with their far right-wing Catholics, they don't represent mainstream Christians in this country. And what you have basically is the Wahhabis, the Catholics, and the evangelicals are devising a plan to blow up the planet. You think I'm joking? They truly believe by blowing up the planet, that will bring Jesus Christ back. Now, of course, in the Wahhabis, they're not saying Jesus is the Son of God, but they are all looking for this all-out caliphate. So for those out there who want a better idea what I'm talking about, just study caliphate, C-A-L-I-P-H-A-T-E. And they know by moving that damn embassy to Jerusalem, they're increasing the chances of this all-out war that's going to start, and it's going to cause Armageddon. These folks live for Armageddon. These folks are such fanatics. They know Donald Trump is scum, but they think that they can use Donald Trump to accomplish the goals of their far right-wing God to still accomplish what they want. So they can ignore Donald Trump's misogyny. They can ignore everything about Donald Trump and his marriages and divorces because he's an instrument of God for the greater good. And they want to destroy the planet. And they don't care if they destroy the planet because they believe they're going to heaven as soon as the planet is destroyed, and they will all be with God, singing in a white man's God with streets paved with gold, no Negroes, no brown folks, and their white God. I hope that answered the question.
All right. 800-450-7876. Joshua is next. Joshua is on line 2 calling from Massachusetts. Josh, you're on with Mark from Anaheim.
Hi, I had a couple, 2 questions I wanted to ask. I wanted to ask him about Putin's comments about if America deploys those missiles out in Europe, that he plans on retaliating with his new weapons. And another question would be, why aren't they doing anything about Fukushima and the fact that they're dumping their wastewater now into the ocean?
Okay, let's start with Putin real quick here. A lot of folks have already compared this to the missile crisis where the U.S., because most folks don't know this, the U.S. had deployed missiles into Turkey, and until Russia deployed missiles in Cuba and forced the United States to remove their missiles from Turkey, that's when Russia removed their missiles from Cuba. You know, everybody makes it try to sound like Kennedy was some macho guy that went down there and forced them, and that's not exactly what happened. We pulled our missiles out of Turkey, then they pulled their missiles out of Cuba. This is a little different, and it's a lot more dangerous. When the Cold War ended, the United States government, by the time Bush was leaving the White House and Clinton was taking over, but the promises were made that we were not going to turn all the former Soviet Pact, Warsaw Pact countries into NATO countries, allies to the U.S. to create this great British-U.S. empire. Well, that's exactly what we did. I mean, as soon as Clinton got in the White House, we started going into Bosnia and Serbia and all these other places. And practically every former Warsaw Pact country today is now a member of NATO or has allowed NATO or the United States to deploy missiles into their countries. Russia is surrounded. The only thing left is Crimea and Ukraine. So what Russia is basically saying is if you deploy these missiles, we have no choice but to deploy our missiles, our more modern missiles, in case of a necessity for counterattack. And Putin, you know, Putin right now, he hasn't been as popular he has been in the past, so he has to appear to be strong because they love an authoritarian. As far as Fukushima, this is personal for me. We have the 2020 Olympics coming up in Japan, and I was told that they are not going to use one of those Kelly Slater-type ranch pools. They're going to actually have the contest in the ocean. The waves aren't really good that time of year in Japan, and more importantly, I have concerns about the radiation levels in the water that nobody needs to be talking about. Fukushima is a major problem, and I would suspect that we have our own Fukushima going on here that's probably not being reported because there's no way in the world we could have had those super storms on the East Coast in the past couple of months with all those nuclear reactors that were especially in North Carolina, that were in path of those, and with all the major flooding in North Carolina. There's no doubt water got into those nuclear reactors. Those nuclear reactors were supposed to be at best 20-year life expectancies, and now they're going on 40, 50 years. So we may already have our own Fukushima right now on the coast of North Carolina without us realizing it. So I just say this: the amount of money. Oh, by the way, and I should tell you this too: most of those nuclear reactors on the East Coast, up and down the East Coast, are owned by the same company that owns the nuclear reactor in Fukushima.
All right. Thanks, Joshua. Thanks for your call. Since we're on Russia, tweet question. Please ask your guest, why does Russia support Venezuela?
Oil. You talking
That's
oil?
It, oil.
Yeah, oil. I mean, seriously. And you have to remember, Mr. Nelson, you mentioned earlier about Castro and Harlem. Who did Castro come to first for support?
In this country, blacks.
Well, but no. What country did he go to first for support?
Don't recall.
The United States. And when the United States turned their back on him, that's when Russia said, hey, we'll help you, Fidel. So, you know, we had the chance for Castro. In fact, a lot of folks don't know this. The United States actually supported Castro against Bautista, then did a flip-flop, and went back to supporting Bautista. And then when Castro defeated Bautista, then all of a sudden we act like Castro was the biggest pariah. You think I'm making this up? Do your research, folks. Okay? We were supporting Castro before we supported Bautista. Because that's how these folks in this, you know, guys like Alan Dulles and John Foster Dulles, they flip-flop whenever it serves their needs. So as far as Russia goes, Russia has a vested interest because who's the biggest ally with Russia in South America, Mr. Nelson?
Who's the biggest ally with Russia in South America?
Brazil. Remember? BRICS. Brazil,
BRICS, right.
Russia, India, China, and South Africa.
South Africa.
So when you have Venezuela with that oil, and Venezuela and Brazil aren't that far from each other, Russia has a vested interest in what goes on in Venezuela. And if the U.S. wants to screw Venezuela, then the Russians will find a way to subvert whatever other country the U.S. is trying to take over down there. It's not that they have an affinity for the people of Venezuela. Venezuela has something the Russian people want or need. including laundering some of their dirty money.
Thanks, Joshua. Thanks for your call. 800-450.
But Mr. Nelson, that's an example of that's an example of the kleptocracy, because you have the very wealthy in Brazil, Venezuela, Argentina. I mean, in Argentina right now, 80% of their money has lost its value. So just imagine the suffering for the average person on the streets of Argentina right now. But the kleptocrats, they're stealing the money blind out of all these banks.
Oh, wow. 800-450-7876. Prince is next on line 4, calling from Montgomery, Alabama. Prince, you're on with Mark from Anaheim.
Mark from infamous Mark from Anaheim. How are you, sir?
Why can't I be famous instead of infamous? But okay, I'll take that, brother.
I wanted to ask you, how do you feel about Andrew Yang? I think that's his name. He's running for president, but he proposed, and I heard Craig Hewlett talk about this before, but he proposed that each American would get almost like a stipend of $1,000 per month. How do you feel about that? Is that kind of like a premise of a one world currency or mark of the beast or something along those lines?
Well, he's not alone. I mean, right now, Mr. Nelson, if you're not aware of it, there's a proposal that each U.S. citizen gets something like $21,000 a year.
Sign me up.
No, you say sign me up. You won't get it. First of all, I come on the show over and over again. I said you have a large population of people. There are no jobs, and there will be no jobs. What would you do with them? Either you have to give them money so they can survive, or you're going to have to kill them. And a lot of countries around the world right now are coming up with ideas of what's the base salary they're going to give to all these people for just being in existence. Now, that's going to be unfair for those who busted their butts and had a job all along. But, yeah, I mean, either you give them resources to survive, or you have to eliminate their existence. So that stipend thing is not a new idea, and he's not alone with that. And there are many Republicans right now who they support the idea, but they can't say anything publicly about it until after the 2020 elections.
All right, and last question for you. How's the economy and the jobs up in California right now?
The economy sucks here just like it does everywhere else. Payless Shoes just announced all stores are going to be closed. So while Donald Trump is talking about how great the economy is, Toys R Us are gone. But see, they have that fancy little restructuring deal. They go out of the country, come back, and then when they come back, they don't have to hire all the people they fired. So now We Be Toys, as we black folks like to call them, Toys R Us is going to return to the U.S. bigger and stronger. They've been protected from all the lawsuits. All those employees have lost their jobs. They'll be replaced by artificial intelligence and robotic assembly lines. Sears, all the Sears stores around here are closing. So, I mean, I don't know how great the economy is except for the people who can afford a $200,000 a year membership to, the Key Largo down in Florida. Everybody else, the economy sucks. It's no different here in California. And because New York and California have been able to survive independently, Donald Trump had them get to pass that new tax law. So the money that the state of New York and California used to get from their tax resources, that has been eliminated. And in the meantime, Trump now is going to cut all kinds of federal funding to California because they want to bankrupt California to bring them online with the rest of the country.
Well, hang on a second, Prince. We got to take a short. Our guest is Mark from Anaheim. As most of you know, Mark's not his real name. He's really not from Anaheim, but that's another story for another day. 800-450-7876. Those are the numbers to speak to him. Next week, we're going to hear from at least one of our guests. It's going to be Sister Shahrazad Ali. So if you're in the DMV, tell all your friends to keep their radios locked on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL. Let's go back to Prince in Montgomery, Alabama. Prince, your question for Mark.
Yeah, Mark, my last thing is, there's a college here. It's called Virginia College. And you had kids that's almost like a month away from graduating. And, and this school was expensive, by the way. I mean, I'm talking about they're taking your Pell, your sub, everything just to be able to go to this particular school. And these kids were like a month away from graduating. That school just shut down and just up and left. And people just, couldn't even get their diplomas and couldn't graduate. I mean, that's just
And that's not an isolated incident. Look at all the people who still suing Donald Trump that didn't get their diplomas or whatever and nobody cares. No, I'm serious. That's who you got in the White House. What about Trump's college? Okay. Virginia College not alone. I mean, Bennett College right now in North Carolina is fighting to survive. That's a predominantly black, all-female college, and it's been around for a long, long time, but that school was on its last leg.
Right.
They don't want you going to college. Education leads to knowledge. If you have the same knowledge, they can't control you. That's why they tell folks not everybody needs to go to college. They want you to be dumbed down. White folks love authoritarians. They don't want no education. They like being told what to do. Because they figure they're going to be told what to do because they're going to be included and you're not. Can't be letting these women get educated. Brown folks getting educated. Black folks getting educated. Let's bring back the good old days. Just like in Brazil, the good old days. That's what we're returning to. So before we run out of time, I just want to remind the listeners, I'll have to go to a library to reach you, but you're worth it. If you want to reach out to me, I'm at Mark from Anaheim, Political Sarcasm 101. That's on Facebook. That's the fan page, not the group site. Mark from Anaheim, Political Sarcasm 101. So I hope that answered your question, Prince.
All right.
Yes, sir,
Thanks, Prince. We're going to keep moving because we're racing the clock. We got a bunch of folks that want to ask him questions. Thank you, Prince.
Yeah, Prince's birthday is next week, Mr. Nelson.
Okay, happy birthday, Prince. 800-450-7876. Jeff is joining us next on line 6 from South Carolina. Jeff, you're on with Mark from Anaheim.
Hello, fellas. How are you this evening?
And Jeff from South Carolina. Go ahead, sir.
Mark, I've been kind of following you guys, and I've been listening a lot. And you watch the news, and you hear people talk about the powers that the president has. And, it seems to me Congress, our House of Representatives, and our senators, even with the Mueller investigation going on, and you being here today talking about the kleptocracy and all that, man, how dumb are we? Because what I'm not understanding is, why is it taking so long? This guy gets on TV and he says all kinds of crazy stuff. He's tweeting out all kinds of foolishness. We hear it every day. The whole world is now like, how did you guys elect this guy? Of course, now, I'm like you now, because my eyes have been open to a lot of stuff. But the question I want to ask is, if they got something on him, if he's done what everybody's suspecting is the John Bird Society, and they got so many people in place now that it's just going to be a wash, because I'm not understanding. And I never thought I would see this in this country as bad as everything else has been, especially for people of African descent, black or brown.
He got the job because they had something on him. That's why they gave him the job. And as long as he does what they tell him to do, he can keep the job. Presidents don't run this country. He's just a figurehead. He's doing what he's told. And you've already had somebody, they don't talk about it anymore. Don't you remember the book that came out last year by Anonymous who said, and when he comes up with some stupid idea, we just ignore him and do what we want anyway.
Oh, yeah.
They came out and told you that publicly, and you don't hear anybody talk about that anymore. And you didn't see them go after anybody who allegedly was the person who came to the media and told the New York Times, we don't listen to him. He puts stuff on our desk, and we take care of what we want, and we do what we want. I know I sound flippant here, but I'm just telling you. Donald Trump was allowed to be the president because he's exactly who they wanted. Grover Norquist said back in 2012, we're going to replace Obama with somebody who only has the IQ of being smart enough to sign his signature. We don't need his agenda. We've already got the agenda. We only need somebody who's smart enough to sign his name.
Well, they have that. Jeff, thank you for your call.
Serious.
Racing the clock here. 800-450-7876. James is next. He's been holding for a while on line 3, calling from the district. James, you're on with Mark from Anaheim.
How's it going, Carl and Mark?
How you doing, sir?
Pretty good. My thinking has been, looking at what's happened over the past 3 years, white people stay on code, and black people have a tendency to give out strategy.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, and I think the other part of that is we're given so many red herrings that we can't see that they're red herrings, and a lot of the stuff that's going on in terms of 24-hour news cycles and talking about stuff that doesn't matter while things...
Oh, no. Everything is a breaking story. Everything now is a breaking story.
Exactly. And repeated to the point where it becomes the truth when it's not.
Right.
In your summation, what should we be really looking at? And I agree with you about the Northwood Project, and if memory serves me correct, it was McNamara that was refused to sign it, right?
That's correct.
Okay, and that was really a precursor to 9/11.
We should be focusing, 1, on our families, 2, on your credit, 3, stop putting your personal business out there in the streets for everybody to know what the hell you're doing.
Exactly.
Okay. 4, I'm not an atheist, so I'm just going to tell you how I feel. You better get closer. Better get closer to your God. Okay. I can't help you on anything else because, see, you go back and watch that TV show Underground. The things that we are experiencing today pales in comparison. The civil rights movement didn't start in the 60s. Those folks in the underground world were the civil rights movement. And they knew if they were merely caught, you lost a foot, you lost a hand, you lost your life, you lost your genitals. And black folks made it through that. And folks today are whining about Donald Trump. I think every black person should be required to watch Underground and see how those black folks never gave up on seeking their freedom. Never gave up, no matter how much the odds were against them. Because unless you see what black folks had to endure in the 1800s and survived, you are not going to make it in this soft world we live in today where you can't go 2 days without your damn social media site.
Exactly. I agree with you wholeheartedly. My last and final question would be, from your vantage point, with the upcoming election, what do you see behind the curtain? Because I think with all these people coming out of the woodwork, again, it's another red herring for something else.
Well, I try not to be. I just call it. Look, I have the Olympics come up in 2020. Now it's in Tokyo, and I'm coaching a lot of females who have aspirations of making it to the Olympics. Okay, from around the world. Mm-hmm. And this is what I've told. And this is what I've told all my girls. I give it a 50-50 chance that they will even be in Olympics. Because I truly believe by 2020, we're probably going to have so many international chaos wars going on that the Olympics are going to be canceled. Or, just like South Africa was boycotted because of apartheid, the way the United States now is... Look, right now as we're speaking, we have thousands of children who have been separated from their parents at the border, and nobody knows where they are. How the hell can you live... Wait a minute. How the hell can we live in a country like that and nobody's talking about the disappearance of thousands of children, and we're going to sit here and talk about Nazi Germany? Nazi Germany is going on here right now. So I'm saying by the time the Olympics come up, there may be enough countries who boycott us, and we won't be allowed to be in the Olympics. Exactly. So there's no way in the world I'm going to sit here and try to predict what's going to happen with the 2020 elections, because right now I think this country is headed for a civil war. And it won't take much for it to set off when you got a guy from the United States Coast Guard who's a lieutenant who just got busted this week with all kinds of guns and ammunition in his home and talking about how he's going to go out there and kill a bunch of people. He's not alone.
No, he's not. He's very well armed.
Oh, but Donald Trump says, but there's a few good in all of those.
Look, I forgot my third point when you dropped that bomb, but thank you for what you do, and stay low and keep your ammunition dry.
Believe it or not, I am sharpening my knife as I'm talking to you folks on the radio.
James, thank you.
You think I'm making it up, Mr. Nelson? You can probably hear it. I'm sharpening my knives.
800-450-7876. Thanks, James, calling us from Washington, D.C. Let's go to Alabama on line 1. Sandy's waiting for us. Sandy, you're on with Mark from Anaheim.
Hey, thanks, gentlemen. I know we're running out of time, so I just have a couple of quick things. Hey, Mark, real quick. I totally agree with you in terms, I think there's a bigger scheme here. And I don't think people realize that. I don't care if you vote for a Democrat or Republican, they have you. The white man has you. regardless of who you vote for. You know what I'm saying? I think it's not a game, but it's just how they want to maintain the supremacy and make you believe that everything is fair. But the question I really have for you is going back to, and I don't know what you think about that, but I think the question I really have for you, too, is going back to the police and how they operate. Why is it that in the United States, in a domestic situation, the police have what's called qualified immunity? But for our service member who goes over and they're fighting global wars and they're fighting wars, they don't have that, and they could be prosecuted under UCMJ. Don't quite understand that, and I also don't quite understand why we can't, how do you undo qualified immunity? Is that something given by the Supreme Court, or is that something we can fight through local systems or federal?
Well, I'm not sure if you're using the correct term, but one of the last things that Daddy Bush did before he left the White House was basically pass a Good Samaritan Act that covered law enforcement, which makes it almost impossible for you, unless you have beyond a shadow of a doubt that this officer had criminal intent prior to the action, to find an officer guilty. And why are the cops given that? Because cops aren't here to... Kamala Harris was just criticized for saying when she was Attorney General of California and she didn't go after dirty cops here in Orange County or dirty cops in the Bay Area. You know what her response was? I was the Attorney General. It ain't my responsibility to go after them. It's up to the public. And people jumped all over here. Now, I retired from LAPD, and I run 2 LAPD stations, including 3 LAPD stations, including one that's closed to the public. And these cops hate my guts, but they read everything I write because they know I'm not going to lie to them. You know one of the things I remind them? I said, you guys don't even read the manual. You know what it says right in the first chapter of the LAPD manual? It is not the responsibility of the police department to prevent crime. That is the job of the public. So I hope that helps answer your question, sister, because I know we've run out of time on this. Mark from Anaheim, Political Sarcasm 101 on Facebook. Find me, folks.
All right. Let's see if we can get another call in real quick. Kenneth in Minnesota.
I think we're out, sir.
Hey, thank you very much.
Make it quick, Kenneth.
Okay, yes. First thing is going to be talking about Russian metaphysics. I heard you a couple shows the other day talk about that.
I've never spoken about Russian metaphysics, sir.
No.
All right, the drummers are warm. We got to get out now. So, Mark.